Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. I pray everyone is well. Pray everyone tuning in as well, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. I hope that these sessions have been of use to people, and there are a few things just I wanted to recap on, and just as a general reminder to myself and to all of you, inshallah, before we continue. Firstly, it's really important that these things, you could say at some level, this is a back to basics type course, but the things that we're looking into are not basic. It's not like until we get to the real stuff. The reason why it's important is that these are essential components of any kind of genuine approach to the spiritual path. Habib Ahmed Mashur al-Haddad, before anyone would, he would take someone on as a student, as a disciple in the spiritual path, he would ask whether they'd memorized all of the prophetic du'as and adhkar. Many of the shuyukh were like this, because sometimes one can get into the mode of, it's nice to be affiliated to the people of Allah, and it's a good thing to be associated with. But there's groundwork to be done, and sometimes those things can get somewhat heavy on the nafs. It's like, well, when's the sky going to open up, and when am I going to see, like, the unseen revealed to me, and all of those kind of things. We have to understand that none of those things, anything that the aspirant upon the path experiences upon the path, is nothing in comparison to just them doing as the Prophet ﷺ did. And sometimes the effects, the spiritual effects, what the soul could potentially feel, the transformative effects may be hidden, but that in and of itself is a deeply mystical experience. That we're not waiting on, well, I said Bismillah, why don't I see, why don't I feel, why don't I... But it's inculcating habits. And what's hoped, inshallah, and if anyone has any suggestions for tuning in online, that we can hopefully work together in bringing about a short treatise, a short text, hopefully some of the fruits of these sessions. So we're going to be drawing these sessions to a close also soon, over the next few sessions. And there are other things we want to be speaking about. But the primary emphasis was really just on an essential daily spiritual practice. What can we derive from the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, which helped us to be a bit more conscious, a bit more alert, a bit more intentional, as opposed to just eating unconsciously, conscious eating. And don't underestimate, even if we can't memorize the full dua, saying Bismillah. I don't even want to say just saying Bismillah. Don't underestimate saying Bismillah. Because if we knew the realities of the Basmala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, so that all of the realities of the Quran are contained within the Fatiha. And all of the realities of the Fatiha are contained with the saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And all of the realities of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim are contained within Bismillah. So if you're saying that Bismillah, what is that activating when you eat, when you go into your home, when you put on your clothes, when you go in your car, whatever it may be, when you do anything, And there are certain things that we should just take on now as habits. It would be nice also to go further deeper into these things about the actual meaning of the saying Bismillah. Because we're a tradition of intentionality and gratitude. Why are we doing it? Bismillah, that's why we're doing it. In the name of Allah. And hopefully that which is done in the name of Allah is protected from a distracted intention, an intention which is, maybe the ego may creep into, or maybe some kind of lack of consciousness may overpower a person from time to time. So sometimes it can be formulaic. That's the nature of any kind of practice. If somebody is training to be an athlete, practice any kind of sport, any kind of skill, there are certain components of it which are just not that much fun. And the nature of any genuine approach to Allah is it's not about entertainment. But what it is doing is it's it's healthy for the soul, healthy for the mind, healthy for the spirit. Just like if somebody's going on some kind of new dietary kind of plan, and they're juicing and they have to cut out, that's going to have a pinch. When the sugar's like, being detoxed from the body, and you're not really having to curb your appetites and certain things. It's not fun, but what it results in is a growth, not only in terms of one's physical health, but one's ability to develop self-restraint. So there are many wisdoms within these sunan. And we pray that all of these things we can really start to apply. There are many, many things, because let's not forget, when they described the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Kana yadhkurullah fi kulli ahyani." He would be in the dhikr of Allah in every moment. So it wasn't just like in the house, now let's just got that over and done with, let me just get back to whatever I want to be doing. His every movement, every transition, time, the way he engaged with time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was, is being seasoned with the remembrance of Allah. Somebody that was inspired, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the greatest way to access the divine gifts in every moment. And the more that we can try and follow that path, the more that we can try and hear his call, the one that was authorized, the one that we can trust, and the more inherent good we're going to feel and experience in our lives. And that's prior to the life of the barzakh. There are many things that are rewards, if you like, beautiful things which lay await, which we're not exposed to, we're not shown. You can't see them in this world, in this ephemeral existence. But all of these things, just saying Bismillah has an effect, and it has an effect of one's life in the grave. It has an effect on one's akhirah. This is all the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we become people of the akhirah whilst in the world. So you become, and that's the nature of that familiarity and that estrangement. Sometimes the people of Allah, they have this, you feel incredibly familiar with them, but they have this otherworldliness about them. And a lot of it is because so much of their practice and what they've conditioned their hearts upon is not connected to this world. And if we can follow in that way, they say to be in the world, but you're not quite of it. So they navigate through the world, and they deal in the world, and they maneuver through the world in a way which is pleasing and dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're not quite of the world. They're not ahl dunya, they're not the people of the dunya that are pulled down. They're people of Allah, and this is why being in their company is always a source of elevation. A person literally feels their spirit's lifted, as they say. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to follow in their way, and their way is that of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, once again, just to be absolutely clear, all of these things, inshallah, what we can try and do, some of the brothers here, they're working on getting stuff out, just the du'as, also transliterated, if people can't read the Arabic, slightly longer du'as, because there are longer du'as. If you say Bismillah, it's a great thing, but if you can learn, at least one du'a, for example, for going to sleep, at least one du'a for waking up, because there are many as well, But if we could add this into our practice and grow this spiritual practice, it's really going to make a huge effect, on one's being. It's going to have a huge effect in your life. Just waking up in the morning and saying, Alhamdulillah, and just going to sleep and being a bit more aware. Just that would make a huge effect in people's lives. Because these things, as we mentioned earlier as well, they're not just isolated things. It hasn't, like if somebody works out, if somebody trains, or somebody eats healthily, it's not just about that one meal or that one training session. It spills out into different parts of your life. You're empowered to do other things that you wouldn't be able to do were you not to go through that kind of training or that kind of regime. And the same thing spiritually. It opens things up for you spiritually, and you're able to tap into that consciousness in difficult times. And it's interesting, the people, الَّذِينَ عَلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ دَائِمُونَ, people that are constantly in this state of salah, of connection, of prayer with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're the people that don't have that hala', that state of anxiety or hysteria. But it doesn't just come as in like what everyone else is in hysteria. Now what do we do? No, you need to irrigate that ground, you need to prepare the field, you need to sow the seeds properly and make sure it's taken care of. Because then all we're doing is we're worshipping the fear of hysteria. It's like even we have Ramadan coming up, and what's the greatness which the people of Allah, the way they extol Ramadan. They say they would prepare for Ramadan 6 months prior to Ramadan, and the 6 months and after they would ask for forgiveness and try and ask that Allah would accept their Ramadan. Like the whole year was really centered around Ramadan, because there's this huge opportunity to get close to Allah, But then straight away after, because they say they put it in its place. Like Ramadan is such blessed, sacred time. However, we don't worship Ramadan. So the first thing they say, because they work on the manhaj in the way of فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغَب. If you finish, just move on. Like, okay, you're not going to do, oh, look what I did, look. No, like you're wasting time now. Yalla. Keep on going, keep on until you die. وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Worship your Lord حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Worship your Lord until yaqeen arrives to you. Allah speaking to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet is at the pinnacle of yaqeen, of certitude, of faith. But what it means here is death. Yaqeen means that thing which is the absolute certain reality. Worship Allah until you die. Keep going. Be in a state of perpetual ibadah and devotion, worship, until your soul is taken. Khalas. That's when the people of Allah, they say the rest time is in the grave. So if we can do that, and if we can cultivate that place, and that's why I don't think these things are small. Because when everyone doesn't know whether they're coming and going, when everyone is in a state of disillusion and hysteria, you've rooted these spiritual practices. You know how to enter your home. You know how to go to sleep. You know how to wake up. And these things, like, people have, a lot of people, it's guesswork. I've kind of made my own kind of regime, but because you're following the one that was given, the greatest being that was given ma'rifah. Nobody knows Allah like Rasulullah. So his practice in everything that he did is from that knowledge. It's the furthest thing from guesswork or hawa or caprice or just desire. Just happened to do this. Everything was inspired. And if you follow the one that was inspired, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you too also become inspired. The more you follow, the more inspired you become. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq, inshaAllah. Bismillah. Alhamdulillah, wa salamu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. So today we're going to be speaking about going in and out of our homes. Today we're going to be speaking about the importance of cultivating prophetic homes. We're going to be speaking, inshallah, about some of the adab of entering into our homes, exiting our homes. One of the themes in this series has been the nature of life being a series of transitions and movements, and how gracefully do we enter into those spaces. Ostensibly a home, a dar, is that place where you're, there's a place where you rest, there's a place where you prepare food. Typically, obviously now, in a pre-modern times, as we said, this wasn't the case, but now in modern times you have the bathroom, the restroom, now in the house. So when you enter into this, this is part of your dominion. It's part of the kingdom of a person. And these sound like archaic words, but there are spiritual realities connected to this. So how do you take care of your dominion, that which is your mulk, you have ownership of? There are different ways to prepare a house, and there's a way to neglect a house and allow it to become derelict. And the Prophet ﷺ used these analogies. He says, don't let your houses become derelict and decaying. Give life to them. So this session, inshallah, will be reflecting and sharing some of the simple practices which we can all try and engage in order to give life to our homes. It's said that the Malaika, the angelic realm, look down upon the homes of the believers where the Quran is recited and where the practice and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is revived, where there's salah, where there's light. They look down upon those homes from the heavens as we look up to the stars. So as we see the stars, we can see these lights in the sky. This is the way the malaika are able to see the homes of people that have been cultivated. So we want our homes to be places of light. And this is why the Sheykh were always encouraging that people spend some time and really consider what goes on in their homes. Dar, that place is that which goes around. Ma yaduru fi dar, what goes around in your house, what's going on in your house, you know. And this is an abode. It's a dwelling, as they say. Dar al-akhirah, as well as the abode of the dwellings of the akhirah. You know, Wallahu yad'u ila dar as-salam. Allah summons to the dar, the abode of peace. So all of these things, that there are different types of abodes. Dar al-bawar. There's an abode, waliyadu billah, of Jahannam. You know, so what do we want to mimic? What are our homes symbolic of? What do they represent? What are they signposts unto? And something that the Sheykh, they say that we should have a form of spring cleaning. We have this in a Western tradition, have a spring clean. And the word for spring in Arabic is Rabi'. That's why we have Rabi' al-Awwal, the first spring. And the nature of Rabi' al-Awwal is it comes throughout the entire year and pollinates the entire year with the nature of that spiritual spring. You know, as the lunar cycle goes through its trajectory, it goes through its orbit. And we should have some kind of routine of tafaqqud, just checking where things are at in our home. And the first practical thing is to look around, scan throughout your home. Because your home is an extension of you, and it has an impact on you. And there are spiritual realities to the home and maintaining one's home that impact your spiritual state. If a person is in a good spiritual state in the home, typically when they come out of the home, they're able to carry that with them. You know, even if the outside climate is challenging, corrosive, difficult to deal with, goes against many of one's principles, you're able to flow and you feel like a protection. If things are not rooted properly within the home, then even if things outside are all good, it's very difficult to maintain. So one's home has a central importance to one's spiritual practice and to the state of one's heart and soul. So they say to look through one's home and literally to scan through, is there anything here which is not pleasing to Allah? Now you can look at things, maybe there are differences and nuances within the opinion. If people want to learn more, they can ask people of knowledge. But even in terms of certain pictures in our homes, the Prophet ﷺ did mention about the nature of certain pictures and how they can be a means to prevent the malaika from entering into one's home. And we don't want this to be the case, because the malaika there, they help facilitate goodness. You know, if you're in a place which is cultivated to welcome malaika, angels, then you're going to find things a lot easier to do. All of these sunnahs which we're talking about, the shayateen, they're going to try and cause you to forget. The malaika, they're going to be there as a energy of light, which, you know, enlightens you and inspires you to remember. And it also helps you to deepen when you contemplate upon these du'as and access some of the deeper knowledges related to these du'as. Another huge benefit in cultivating a home to welcome the malaika is that you'll find that relationships become solidified. You know, so many people's relationships, unfortunately, when things become challenging and people often have marital disputes, often it has some part to play with darker forces, with the jinn, the shayateen. So we need to be acutely aware of these kind of things. You know. And this may be something of a shock to many people, but as believers we should really be aware of this. We are sharing our homes. The people that live in our homes are not just the people that we can see. And there are ways to cultivate and welcome guests, and also to repel unwanted guests from our homes. وهكذا. So to look around, literally scan throughout the house. If there's anything, particularly if there are people There are certain things which are obvious. If someone has pictures, or and it may be something even like on a magazine, or something that you didn't really think of, or like post through the door, and just to be aware. If somebody that's not mahram and there's a picture of them exposing their awra, or even if they're mahram, it's inappropriate to have those kind of things in one's home, because these things will repel the malaika. Anything which is generally displeasing to Allah, any form of corruption or fisq, that which is, to enter into the home, people that are have some kind of enmity towards Islam. In the dhikr as-salihin tanzil as-sakina, when the people of righteousness, people whose hearts have been cultivated, good people, people of light, people of the prophetic way, when they're mentioned, sakina, tranquility descends, which also means malaika. Sakina can be a synonym for malaika, for angels, because that tranquility is through the presence of angels when they're mentioned. So if we have pictures of them, or we have their books, or we have their teachings, all of these kind of things around the home, this is a source for bringing sakina and tranquility. Similarly, when the people who are not salihin, when the fasiqeen, and the people that have enmity towards, truth and haqq, and people that are foul and corrupt, when these people are extolled and given, pride of place in one's home, this also is a means for bringing darkness. This is why we should be very careful about even mentioning the names of people that are not, currently in a good state. And we judge by the outward in this. We don't need to be overly relativize this reality. If somebody's in a state of ma'siyah, khalas, then they're from ahl ma'siyah. Can they change? Absolutely. Will they die upon that state? We pray that they don't. There's the difference. Su'u dhan is, considering someone destined to the hellfire. However, there is a reality where we do judge a book by its cover in this state. And this is something which is very important for Muslims to understand. Maybe they're a nice person, but they're actively sinning in front of you in that state. Maybe they are, but that we hate and we dislike the act and not the person. However, you can't take the act away from the person and deal with the person, because they're the one which is engaging in the acts at that time. You retreat and you pray for them, and you keep your heart pure towards them. If you're able to help or serve someone in this regard, just as an aside to this, then and influence them positively, then that's good. But the scholars say when it becomes just a waste of time for you and the other person is when you're the one that's becoming adversely influenced through that dark company. So know oneself, know one's lane, and just stick to where is most conducive to one's spiritual state. So having things like pictures, and this can even also mean on the TV. We're not just talking about a framed nice thing mounted on the wall. How many believers' homes have been corrupted by images of people which are actively doing things which is the complete opposite of the way of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and people feel nothing in their hearts towards this. And this is being entered in through people's screens left, right and centre. And the people of insight have said this for many, many, many years, right from the onset of this thing. Whether it's a TV or the computer, whatever it may be. So the home of a believer should be a place where the malaika want to come and frequent. So we should rid it of those things which are displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, in terms of cultivating, because you don't want to just desolate your entire place and have this kind of very, simplicity is always recommended. Nevertheless, how does one ornament one's home? How does one decorate one's home? Something that has been encouraged throughout this series is to have those reminders. And there are many, many people now, mashallah, that they'll have a nice printout of the du'as just outside the bathroom, or just upon entering into the house, or maybe where they eat, or within the kitchen. Just things like remember to say Bismillah. And here's the thing: people have all of these funny things like fridge magnets, and there are all these kind of like sentimental phrases like a happy home is I can't remember. They have these kind of things. Why not have something like a happy home is the one that remembers Bismillah? Have something of meaning, because the sentimentality is cute, but it's not really going to give any benefit in your akhirah. Make your fridge a place of meaning. place of dhikr of Allah on it. When you open the fridge, say Bismillah. Everything you do, Bismillah, Bismillah, Bismillah. It will fuse barakah into everything that you do. There's some of the beautiful tradition of Islamic calligraphy as well. When a teacher went to Alhambra in southern Spain, they were looking around the remnants of the walls, and engraved in the walls were the names of Allah. And he said that's why it remained. Through the barakah of the presence of those names, that's why it was still preserved. And these people don't speak out of, oh, that sounds nice. He was speaking a reality there, that's why. So we should have the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala around our house. Things which always remind you. Every corner you turn, it reminds you about who you are, where you're going, what you're doing, what you should be doing. Our houses shouldn't just be a place of, distraction. So that's a really important advice, to spend some time and look into how we can try and start to implement this. And another advice is to keep things simple. Like if you've got like a whole list of du'as and nobody ever does any of them, then the whole point has been missed. And this is once again getting back to basics. While there are many du'as that the Prophet ﷺ said in this, yeah, but you're not even saying Bismillah. Well, there are many adab when the Prophet ﷺ went into his home, yeah, but you're not even going in with your right foot. And these are basic things. And if a person says Bismillah and goes in with their right foot, alhamdulillah, this is a good thing. Now, the nature of the home is there are people, they may be living on their own, they may be living as a couple, they may be living with children, maybe living even with extended family. And typically the nature of the home is you're going to have, even if you live alone, there are going to be people frequenting, coming in and out of one's home. And the nature of the home is something which is a place of growth and cultivation. So the nature of authentic prophetic spiritual practice is it's not just a solo job. It's not just something you're doing and the rest of the family just leave to, to their own devices. In a gentle, encouraging, nurturing way, then you bring people along with you, and you seek inspiration in the people around you, and you listen and cultivate. This is why certain adab within the house, the Muslim home should not be homes of shouting, where people are shouting. And this can be difficult to do sometimes. It's just the nature of living in close proximity, particularly maybe if there are young children and they're doing all sorts of things, but that's the standard. The Prophet would never raise his voice in that way. So if we do that, we should recognize that. And which path do I want to go? The prophetic way. And it's hard, that's the whole point. But you to hold on, يملك نفسه عند الغضب, the one that holds on to themselves when triggered, when angered, that's a sign of true strength, as the hadith mentions. So to be a place that it's filled with smiling, it's filled with happiness. من كان يؤمن بالله وباليوم الآخر فليقول خيرا أو ليصمت. That the one that believes in Allah and the last day, meaning that believes in Allah and that you're accountable to Him, let him speak good. Let the person speak good, speak well, speak in a beautiful way. Or liyasmut, keep absolutely quiet. You don't have anything good to say, keep quiet. This is an important thing, because unfortunately, because of the saturation through the avenues of the channels of social media, often people just go on this negative rant, like this non-stop flow of and it's symbolic of what the news feed is doing to our souls, because it's this kind of mindless flicking up and this is kind of important, it's kind of less important, this is tragic and horrific, this is grotesque, and people, you're taking that in and you're digesting it and you're bringing it back up. So just to monitor when you're with other people in the house or you have guests, sometimes it's not what you say, but if you're in a constant stream of negativity, that's not the way of a believer. The Prophet ﷺ, كان يحب التفاؤل, he would love optimism, because that's the closest thing to truth. That's the closest thing to what's real, not just because it's nice to do. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, so just to be careful. If we feel negative, everyone has days when they feel a bit constricted, maybe they feel a bit down, you know, but just to quarantine oneself in that state, irrespective of, you know, of anything else. You know, to quarantine one's negativity. You know, and they say, well, isn't that just holding it in? I need to let it out. Yeah, but not inflicting some, you know, unassuming miskeen that's, you know, inhabiting the same household. You know, vent it out in dhikr. Turn to Allah. You know, vent it out. You know, close the door and cry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also be patient. That's the saying. You know, kadhimin al-ghayz, the people that subdue their anger. You know, this whole idea you got to just let it out. Tamam. That's not the way of our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you choose. You choose where you want to go. You choose who you want to be with. You choose whose sunnah you want to revive. No. So these principles, have positive homes, homes which smile, homes which, you know, have goodness. You go into a home and it breathes the life of generosity and kindness and service and khidmah, and people, you know, it's a manifestation of the verse, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى, assist each other in birr, in obedience, you know, in living up to what you've been called to do. You have a duty, you know, work together with taqwa, be conscious together, you know, help each other in the service of Allah, you know. وَلَا يَعْلَمْ جُنُودَ رَبِّكَ إِلَّا هُ. No one knows the junood, the soldiers of God except Him. You know, and the soldiers of God are the people which give life to the sunnah of His beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even in the depths of their homes. You know, da'wah is not just about, you know, calling people to this deen and calling people to the, you know, back to taqwa and back to tawheed and back to the sunnah. It's not just something that we do on a talk or on a mimbar or when you're, you know, when you're writing something. It's when you're alone and no one else sees. Da'wah ilallah, calling to Allah. You give life to a sunnah, and this has a light which spreads. You know, not just in your home. You're going to be a source of rahmah for all of the neighbors around you as well. So when we go into our homes, in terms of the actual practice now, some of the things that we can actually look into, we even do something as seemingly mundane as going into one's home. And we know it's not mundane. Why? Because this is your safe zone. This is Dar al-Islam. People say, oh, we don't live in a Muslim land. If you're able to establish those realities in your home, what are you talking about here? You're able to wave a flag, and that's, you know, and you need an Islamic state of being, a hal of Islam, the realities of Islam, the hal. Lisan al-hal antaq min lisan al-maqal. And we need to really be careful of a lot of this false rhetoric, which is not true to our tradition, you know. Because the Prophet ﷺ in Dar al-Arqam at the beginning, when they were outwardly oppressed, then they did, you know, the Prophet ﷺ, this is what he was doing. He was cultivating a climate, you know, within his home of ibadah, of taqwa, of consciousness, of worship, of devotion, of sincerity, of truth, of, you know, everyone's now directing people back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, irrespective of what anyone else is doing, even next door to you, you know. A lot of these things, they're subtle excuses of the nafs. Oh, we live in difficult times, we live in a non-Muslim society. Well, nobody put a gun to your head and told you to put that in your house, or told you to turn that channel on, or told you to look at that on your phone, or told you, you know, forced you to neglect time after time after time just to say Bismillah, you know, when you enter into the home. As we know, like Mashatat Fir'aun, you know, the woman that used to comb the hair of the children, the wife of Fir'aun, she was a believer. And the Prophet ﷺ smelt her fragrance, you know, on Laylatul Isra wal Mi'raj. And when he asked about who he was, that Jibreel said that this is the woman, she was a believer in the time of Fir'aun, in absolute tyranny in the home of Fir'aun. And how was she discovered? That she was a person of tawheed, of recognition of Allah, a person of truth, a person of reality. And when she was combing the hair of the daughter of Fir'aun, she dropped the comb. And when she dropped it, she went down to pick it up, she said, Bismillah. And the The daughter of Fir'aun says, "Kif Bismillah? What do you mean Bismillah? What about, it's in the name of my Bismillah Abi, in the name of my father, he used to, you know, Waliyadu billahi ta'ala." And she refused and she was tortured and killed, you know, radiallahu anha. But this is the nature of a woman in the home of Fir'aun, you know. So what excuse do you have to say Bismillah? No one's threatening torture, nobody's threatening. This is the realities. If these things start to seep into the soil of our lands, then everything else will follow. You know, we don't start to sow a seed backwards. You don't get a dead branch which is already decayed and shove it in the soil and expect growth. You go right down to the seed and you cultivate it and you understand if it's dormant. You need to learn that the right environment needs to be there to cultivate it in order for it to germinate. And you water it and you irrigate it time after time, day after day, with patience, with gentleness, with care, with love. This is how Iman is cultivated. 23 years, you know, the prophetic teachings, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Half of us who can't spend 23 minutes just paying some kind of attention to these things. It's really important. It's the whole reason why we're created. لِيَعْبُدُونَ. This is it. So when you go into the house, you say Bismillah, and you enter in with your right foot. Now one tip is to do this consciously, not just to like flop into one's house, just to like, you know, a lot of the time when people walk, they just kind of, or that half step on the entry point. No, understand you're entering into a zone now. You're transitioning from the outside world now into like a bubble. There is a reality to what's going in. You're going in now to a zone, to your own safe haven, your helter. You know, many of the people of the Salaf, they would establish small villages and towns and call it a helter, like a safe haven, you know, where all of the principles of the prophetic way were established, you know, within that place. So you have that, like there's in Hadramaut, Heltat Ahmed bin Zayn al-Habashi, you know, the helter of Habib Ali bin Hassan al-Attas, you know, it's called Mesh. All these places, which were often previously places which were, you know, very different. You know, there was this one place in Hadramaut, one of the early Imams, Imam Abu Bakr al-Adani, he was on his way through the desert in Amd, and he was mugged and robbed by bandits, highwaymen, Bedouins that came and just robbed him. And he turned up and he made dua. You know, he made dua that Allah changes this place. And then hundreds of years later, you have the emergence of someone called Habib Ali bin Hassan al-Attas. And he went to that place and he completely transformed it. And they say he was the answer of the dua of Habib Abu Bakr al-Adani, Imam Abu Bakr al-Adani. And one of the Bedouins, and he said about him, because he changed it from a place of ghafla to a place of the remembrance of Allah. A place, he cleared out those things and detoxed the entire place of those things which are displeasing to Allah, and brought it back to life through sacred knowledge, through gatherings of remembrance, through the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. And what happened? People felt suffocated. People felt like, people felt illuminated. People felt like they could now exhale. That's the nature of the sunnah. It doesn't suffocate you, it raises you and elevates you from being imprisoned to the shackles of the dunya. That's the nature of the sunnah. The sunnah is freedom. Not knowing the sunnah is being in bondage. The sunnah is freedom. So, one of the Bedouins, he wrote a line of poetry. He said he made it Jannah ba'd ma kan nar. He made Mashhad, this place. It was paradise after it was once fire. You know, he completely transformed the nature of things. And this is what happens when the lights of the sunnah seep into the soil of a land. You know. So when you go into your house, say Bismillah. Go in with your right foot first. If you're not used to doing it, this is consciousness. This is being mindful. You're being aware. You know, there's either your right foot or your left foot. You know. But it's not just that you happen to go in with your right foot. You're consciously and actively and intentionally going in now with your right foot. And you say Bismillah in the name of Allah. Now if you don't do that, that we know from the from the narration is that there are shayateen waiting outside a person's house. Because they're waiting. Because they have a form of sustenance which they take, not from the physical food or not for the physical dwellings, but they enter and they're able to detract from the spiritual climate of that person, or the barakah in one's food. So they wait on the cusp of that domain, which is the entry point into your house, which the wall physically, or the door physically represents. And if a person does not say Bismillah upon entering into the house, then the shaitan, not only one of the shayateen goes in, he calls to a whole tribe, a whole group of people. Because they all have networks. Don't think it's just, we've got a group of people, we've got a gathering going on. They have their own gatherings. It's all mimicked, dark and light. And he summons them, he calls them. We've got a place to stay tonight. He didn't mention the name of Allah. Let's come and go and stay in his house. And if you say Bismillah, then he's prevented, it's shielded, it's a force field. Shaitan is unable to penetrate the house. So to say Bismillah when you go into your house. Now the dua, inshallah, which we're just going to go through, which is something which you try and learn, may take some time to memorize, but this is the one dua that we're going to do, and inshallah we can get this out to people. Allahumma inni as'aluka khayra mawlaj wa khayra makhraj. Bismillah walajna, Bismillah kharajna, wa ala Allahi rabbana tawakkalna, which is the dua for entering into the house. And this is a form of also greeting the house. We're also to say Assalamu alaikum. When a person goes into the house, say Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum. Now what if there's no one in the house? Well, as we said, the people or that which resides in your house is not just that which you can see. So you're also greeting other entities within the home, and they will respond also accordingly. Now if you don't say, if there's no other human in the house, you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin, as we do in the tashahhud. Peace be upon us and upon all of ibadillahi salihin, the righteous servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the jinn and from mankind. When you go into the house, you say that Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's the sunnah to give salams to the people of the house. Often, what's the first point of contact? If there's someone in the house, when you go into the house, what's that first exchange? The shaitan's waiting for these moments. What's it going to be? Is it going to be dhikr? Is it going to be salam? Or is it going to be some form of ghafla? Is it going to be some kind? And if it is, then that's when dispute and argumentation and things start to crumble and deteriorate. And the shaitan is ready for a good night. We don't want to do that. Nip it in the bud. Strangulate him. Keep him outside of the house. Cut him off from all sources of partaking in that barakah and blessing. Cultivate the home. So when you go into the house, Bismillah, with your right foot. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now it's also recommended, if we can, to read Ayatul Kursi. And this is one of these things that we should be constantly doing. Before we go to sleep, when we go into the house, if we're able to do it. Now once again, to affirm, none of these things are to overwhelm people. If you can go into the house and say Bismillah with your right foot as a spiritual practice, maintain this, then this is a huge thing. This is a huge thing. But these are just other practices of the Prophet ﷺ, which are a means of protection and an increase in the fortification of one's spiritual state. Now it's not just fortification and protection, but it's also a means for openings. We're not just a deen where we're constantly on the defensive. The shaitan is pretty easy to take care of because he moves away in the remembrance of Allah. But our deen is not just one of just, surviving, paddling, and just so we don't drown. It's sailing through those waves and, ascending, riding the crest of the wave. What do they call it? What's the top of the wave? The wake of the wave. So those things have a spiritual reality. And how do we do that? Through implementing these things. And in terms of dhikr, the more the merrier. The more you want to ascend, the more dhikr that you do. So everyone takes it in accordance to their resolve and their sincerity. But the base minimum that every Muslim should be doing, you go in with your right foot, you say Bismillah. Tayyib. Now, just whilst we're at the door, obviously there will be times when you go outside of the house. And which foot do you go outside? What's the first foot which you place when you go outside? The left foot. I thought you go right foot first, but into the good places, you know. And what we mean by a good place is safe zones, you know, or places which are more sacred than another place. And some places are incredibly sacred, like the masjid. The mosque, it's sunnah to go with one's right foot. But they say even like a place of learning, it's recommended to go, because you still have a choice. The Prophet said, oh, whatever, don't bother with it. No. If it's a good place, then you go in with your right foot. Same when you go into your home. And the point being is the right has a spiritual significance. It's the way of the Prophet, it's that which he would incline towards. So in effect, what you're doing is you're leaving the right-hand side in slightly longer, split second longer. But it's because it's that movement is a movement of the Prophet ﷺ, has a profound spiritual effect. So you actually enter out of the house with the left foot first, leaving the right foot in the longest. You go in with your right foot, and you go out with your left foot. Tamam. And then you read the dua. Bismillah, amantu billah, tawakkaltu ala Allah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-aliyyil azim. Once again, if the minimum that we can say, because it's not like, it's going to take me months to memorize this. People's capacity to memorize is different. And even in terms of, maybe people can't read the Arabic, maybe people are really struggling hard with the transliteration. Everyone knows Bismillah. Bismillah. And if you don't, then repeat it a few times and it's going to be easy to do. And it's one of these ones which we need to know. You know, Bismillah. In the name of Allah. But the full dua is Bismillah, amantu billah. I've placed my, I'm believed in Allah. Amantu billah. Tawakkaltu ala Allah. I've put my tawakkul in Allah. Not even in me or, there's so much talk about, subhanallah, like, we have these things now which we make fard, and they're important, and it's, we're not talking about the health and safety culture is ridiculous. We're not saying this, but there's an imbalance. So the idea of people like religiously put on a seatbelt, but don't say Bismillah. So you've placed your tawakkul in a seatbelt. That's the reality. It's taking the means and keeping us. Nobody's denying that. Tie the camel. Nobody's saying that. Tie your seatbelt. Keep safe. We're not saying, because if you don't do that, it's called tahawwur. And we live in a world of asbab and means. If you run out into, head-on traffic, that's not going to be, place my trust in Allah. That's not a good way to go. That's stupid. It's called tahawwur. It's an imbalance. But it's also an imbalance to think, health and safety, everything's in check, and not a single utterance of the dhikr, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this dua is an affirmation, because dua is not only an invocation, not only are you asking for Allah, and remembering Allah, but it's also a reminder to you, who am I going to place my trust in now? Who am I placing my tawakkul in now? Who am I saying, yeah, Allah, I'm safe in your hands and I trust you, so take care of me. Tawakkaltu ala Allah. I've placed my tawakkul in you. What kind of a person starts to cultivate that hal? Do you think they're going to be bothered by, what people think of them going up and down the street? Do you think they're going to be bothered about some, cussing them out that they're Muslim? The opposite. They're going to be radiating light because they place their trust in Allah. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got your back, what do you think? You're going to be a source of khidmah and service and kindness and smiling. Irrespective if people don't smile back. You place your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the greatest one that did this, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they say when he would walk, is as if he was walking with an army, a charging army. There was such haiba and such spiritual impact because he placed his trust in Allah and Allah had his back, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So if you do this, then you also walk with the same haiba, and it unlocks things when you're walking. Don't think these du'as don't activate things. These du'as is not, it's just something to say, something to do, some other kind of random thing, other religions have the same thing. This is haqq. This is from Nabi al-Haqq, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Prophet of truth. And it activates things. It's real. If you speak them into reality, it unlocks realities. These incantations. And this is why it's important. People say, oh, can we not just do it in English? You can. Do it in Swedish, do it in whatever language you want to do. But it's important for preservation to know you are now uttering the exact same movements of the lips, of the tongue, of the teeth, the breath is mimicking the way of the Prophet ﷺ. That in and of itself activates realities. So when you're doing this, you go outside of the house, you're following the way of the Prophet ﷺ. You're going out with it. What kind of consciousness is this going to imbue within a human heart? You think if the ummah starts to go outside and just say Bismillah, then you're going to go and start to do stuff which is haram or dislike to Allah, or just you're going to go out with anger. And even if a person goes out of the house and for whatever, they're frustrated, reading those du'as is a means to put a person back into a state of balance, to recalibrate a person and put them back into a state of harmony. Bismillah, amantu billah, tawakkaltu ala Allah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. There's no power, there's no might, there's no strength, there's no control except with Allah. Nothing can do anything to me, prevent me, restrain me, empower me, protect me, benefit me, raise me, lower me, help me, assist me, except with Allah, except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What a powerful dua. So if we can try and memorize this, then even just something like going into our house and going outside of our house now becomes a spiritual practice, a meditation, a means to come back to consciousness. That's about how many times do we go in and out of our houses? Because I thought meditation was just to sit down and, every moment. That was the spiritual practice of the Prophet in every moment. So when you go out into the world, you place your trust in Allah, you know why you're doing it, you're doing it with an intentionality. May Allah give us tawfiq, inshallah. It's really important also that when we cultivate times in our day and in our week and allocate times that we sit together as a family, as families. This is the practice of the Salaf, where there's literally a detox from any screens that people may have in the house, and people sit together. In Tareem, they call it Jalsat al-Shay. It's the tea gathering, and they actually read books together as a family, out loud, and maybe discuss things. And there's also an opportunity for tafaqqud. We've spoken about this as a primary component of da'wah, just taking care of people, inquiring about other people. Now, if that's to people that you don't even know, what do you think is the incumbency for people that live in your own household, part of your family, in your own home? How are you doing? How is your day? How are things going? And people should, cultivate this spirit of honesty. A big problem that has seeped into many Muslim households is this idea that my children can't do anything wrong. Not my child. And anyone that gives any kind of nasiha, any advice, they're like, oh no, this can't. Previous peoples, if somebody gave them advice, then they would take it seriously and they would appreciate it, because they know that it's a collective consciousness. We're one ummah, we're all heading in the same direction. You're not just doing it to like nitpick. That's our culture. You'll help. Jazakallah khair. Thank you. I know you weren't doing it to, out of disrespect. If you've seen, something, then you give us nasiha. We need to do things in a spirit of nasiha and do things gently and kindly and with wisdom. It also creates this environment of conversation, and the children particularly, especially as growing up, that they're able to speak openly with their parents. They're going through things, particularly in our societies, because they're going to find some other person. They're going to find a surrogate dad or a surrogate mum, and that person may be the same age as them. It may even be online. They're going to find someone to get their advice from. And the way of a Muslim is you fulfill the role of a father. You fulfill the role of a mother. You stand up to that duty, that responsibility, and you cradle and you nurture their their experience in the world through gentle and beautiful advice. You know. Discipline does not mean harshness. Discipline does not mean harshness. An absence of discipline, you know, people, they've done psychological studies that many young men in particular now feel that a lack of love, you know. And it's not because, oh, I wish someone was once harsh to me. No, somebody guided me. They cared enough to show me that there is a way. And they didn't suffocate me, but they nurtured that experience. You know. Some of them have said that we live in a fatherless generation. And what that means is there are fathers and mothers, it's not just up to the dad, which are not living up to their responsibility and truly nurturing and caring for people. And what's worse still, maybe they, you know, throw them off in some madrasa, some miskeen teachers in the madrasa that are having to do the tarbiyah of the child. Aib, shameful for a Muslim parent to think that it's the duty of a teacher to teach your child manners. The role of a teacher in Islam, they say the Salaf would teach them, it's as if like that's your adab with the Prophet ﷺ. How are you towards your teachers? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ مُعَلِّمًا, I was only sent as a teacher. So if a Muslim child has no respect for their teacher, and we don't take from any other way, that's not our culture. We have deep respect for the teacher because of what they represent. You know? And ultimately, who's the ultimate teacher? You know? So this is the way of our learning. People of adab, people of respect, people of love, create peace in the house. We should also establish regular gatherings of dhikr in our homes. You know, dhikr is not just something you go and do in the club, you know, with the guys. It's not like a Muslim lad's night out. You know, dhikr is, you know, should be cultivated in one's home with one's wife, with one's children, with one's relatives. You know, and there's so much beauty in this adhkar. You have the ratib of Imam al-Haddad, which is all from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, we can do this dhikr, establish it in the home. You know, and although I don't like to say this, but how much time does it really take? I mean, if it took hours, cool, great, khair, it's good. What else are we doing? But it doesn't. It takes 10 minutes. Because we're busy with other 10 minutes out of 24 hours to read dhikr, which is a protection, fortification, mean for spiritual openings, brings the hearts together. You know, so many people, they're in disarray in their homes because there's no dhikr to infuse between people's hearts, and they know everything about Islam, so they think, well, you know, and they know everything which is going on, you know, with the Muslims all over the world. And you don't have the devotion or the dedication just to start some form of dhikr, to remember Allah. You've remembered everything else, so busied with the affairs of what you think of the affairs of the Muslims, and you've forgotten Allah. That's Bani Islam, that's the tribe of Islam that you've connected to, that's the club you've ascribed to, and you've not delved into the realities. You know, if you really want to take care of people, you really want to be a source of service that will transform the ummah, then be a person of dhikr, be a person of remembrance. You know, so to do this within one's home, and to allocate a time, it may differ obviously with different days of the week, but at very least to have some form of dhikr in the home. And one of the things, a lot of the time, a lot of parents, they find it very difficult to get their young children off to sleep. You know, and the scholars recommend to make dhikr, to be in a state of dhikr. Often a child feels anxious because they've just watched a load of screens and TV and they've got these weird cartoon monster things which are going around. What's all that? They go into bed like that. No wonder they don't go to sleep. And the parents are like, go to sleep. Look at the state that you're in. You know. But if we bring it back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, have you done your adhkar? Have you done your dhikr? Let's do some dhikr together. You know, and you create, you know, be a source of nur in the room, and you do it together. And then, what's that going to do to that child's heart? How is that going to cultivate that child's soul? They go to sleep every night, night after night, week after week, month after month, year after year. The whole childhood, when they went to sleep in dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you not think that's going to have an impact, an imprint on that human soul? What kind of child is that going to grow up to be? And these things, once again, and they seem like simple things, but this is what it's all about. It's about the subtle things. You know, if you don't take care of the foundations, it doesn't matter how tall you build the edifice, how wonderful the decor and the chandeliers are inside the building. If you're not taking care of the foundation, it all comes crumbling down. May Allah make our homes places of revival of the sunnah of the beloved of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah allow us to apply these practices. May Allah allow us to write them down and allow us to really kind of, you know, to look into them. How can we, this is applied spirituality requires application. You know, how are we going to do it now? This is how am I going to adapt this now into my house? And one of the signs that Allah has accepted a person, you know, in this regard, is they start to practice these things in their lives. And this is the weightiness of this type of knowledge. It was not preserved, and it was not imparted through the sanad just to kind of like, oh, that's a nice lesson, moving on. You know, it's ilm min amal. We've put it into practice. You know. And may we all be those people that implement the way of the Prophet ﷺ. We go into our homes in a prophetic way to create prophetic homes, and we go out into the world in a prophetic way to create a prophetic world. You know. And we're people of, you know, that are fortified from the shayateen. You know, we've got our minds on the goal, our hearts on the goal, our hearts are united. This is what the Prophet ﷺ, this is the blueprints which he came to lay down. You know, this is where Muslims were. Their hearts were so alive because they were cultivated every day by this experience. We don't just go out into the world like, oh, another day. You go like, Allahu Akbar, another day, another opportunity to serve. You know. And in this time now, there are many opportunities to serve people. And we've got Ramadan, you know, coming up very, very soon. You know, let it be a means to cultivate our homes. People are saying quarantine. Let's call it khalwa. Quarantine, what's that? You're not a cat that's just come on an aeroplane. You know, come khalwa. You make it an active spiritual intention. You know, you're in spiritual solitude now. And how do you construct that wird? You've now had a particular wird imposed upon you. Yeah, what are you doing? How do you structure your day? You know, if a person learns one of these adhkar, yeah, one of them. Yeah. And even if you practice, for example, there's some people tuning in different parts of the world, maybe they're not allowed in and out of their homes as much as they're used to. But the bayt is the place, is also one of the names for home, or house in Arabic, is from the place where you, tubit fi, like that you sleep or spend the night in. So there's also the position that it actually counts as your bedroom. So you can practice as many times as you want when you go out of your actual bedroom, your sleeping quarters, to read the du'as to go in and out, to read Ayatul Kursi. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. May Allah allow this to be a lifestyle which we cultivate and something which we're able to live. And this is a legacy. This is a legacy. Imagine if people can impart these realities to their children, to their loved ones, and to their, you know, this is nurturing the people in their home, you know, empowering them with the prophetic light. May Allah give us tawfiq. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.